It is a pleasure to present to you the Philippines' priority investment areas as we move in the new economy. But first, let me share with you where we are and where we are headed. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Philippines had an average GDP growth rate of 6.6%, the second fastest growing GDP in Asia. The pandemic, however, pushed the economy to decline by 9.6% in 2020 as the country prioritized the saving of lives over the economy. And therefore, we had to institute strict lockdowns and mobility, especially during the second quarter of 2020. As the Philippine government learned to manage this COVID-19 virus, reflected by cases subsequently decreasing, and with the strengthened vaccination rollout, we were able to once again gradually and safely reopen the economy. This immediately translated to a recovery as seen in all the economic data. For one, our country's GDP garnered an economic rebound of 4.9%, and this is cumulative for the first 3 quarters of this year, although the 4.9% is still below the 2019 pre-pandemic level by 5.7%. But with the GDP growth of 4.9%, hitting a full year 2021 growth target of 5 to 5.5% is therefore very doable, especially as we lowered the alert levels in many parts of the country, particularly NCR, starting October, the fourth quarter of this year. And that led to more sectors with higher or increasing operational capacity. If we reach 5.5% GDP growth rate this full year 2021, the 2022 GDP growth figure just needs a minimum of 4.8% to restore 2019 pre-pandemic levels of 19.3 trillion pesos. Then we will be back on the pre-pandemic levels. But note that the target growth rate for 2022 is even around 6 to 7%. Let me just go through quickly on other economic indicators showing positive developments for the country. The country's index for manufacturing, known as the PMI, Purchasing Managers Index, is up to 51 as of October, a notable recovery from a drop to 32 level in April of last year at the height of the lockdowns. And to note, any number above 50 signifies growth. Meanwhile, exports have rebounded by 18%, with cumulative export value in the first 9 months of the year, or year-to-date September, equivalent to $55.7 billion US dollars. This is even 5% higher than 2019 pre-pandemic levels of $47 billion, indicating real recovery and not just because of a low base in 2020. Same thing for the foreign direct investment. Cumulative foreign direct investments as of August year-to-date August post $6.4 billion US dollars. This is almost 40% higher than the $4.6 billion recorded for the same period of last year, and even higher by 36% over pre-pandemic 2019 FDI levels, once again signifying real growth. It is also noteworthy to emphasize that since 2016, the Philippines has risen from 6th rank to 4th rank among our fellow ASEAN countries in terms of FDI inflows. As we learn to manage the virus and improve treatments and eventually started to roll out the vaccination program, mainly through this year, we began easing the restrictions and gradually reopened more sectors of the economy. And among the main contributors to our GDP's growth for the past 10 years, before the pandemic, were the manufacturing and the services sector. As we see economic rebound from the first 3 quarters of this year, these sectors again manifested strong rebound. On the GII or Innovation Index for 2021, the Philippines ranked 51st among 134 economies. Our country's strengths were identified by the GII report to be in the areas of high-tech imports and exports, offering formal training by companies, utility models, ICT exports, creative goods exports, and science and engineering graduates, among others. In order to maximize our gaining momentum, our vision towards stronger, and sustained economic recovery is anchored on a strategy called Rebuild. And Rebuild stands for revitalizing businesses, investments, livelihoods, and domestic demand. That means revitalizing consumption to boost demand and empowering production capacities, such as those in agriculture, industry, and services, to meet the recovery in demand. On the supply side, we seek to enhance production capacities in agriculture, industry, and services sector to help build our export competitiveness and manage imports. This means basically increasing our capacity so that we have products to export. No? And this is important also, gaining back the demand, re-stimulating demand to attract more production activities and create a better business environment for investments. This should leverage more and encourage more investments, jobs, and income, creating a virtuous cycle of sustained and growing economic activity with a strong domestic linkages. On the demand side, it starts with government support via economic stimulus to keep jobs. This can be achieved through the formula, which is not new to many of us, the GDP formula of CIGX minus N strategy, which is essentially, and you can see that in the slide, specifically this strategy pertains to encouraging and strengthening consumer expenditure, continuously attracting investments, increasing government expenditure, just like what we're doing in infrastructure development, build, and further boosting our exports, and of course, managing imports. With this strategy, our economy will be able to maximize one of our key advantages, our people. Out of the 108 million population, which serves as a growing market base as per capita income increases, there are 49 million highly skilled, educated, English-speaking, dedicated, and cost-efficient workforce. The country also sits on a demographic sweet spot with an average age of 25.7 years old, which means more years ahead for a growing consumer market and workforce. Likewise, it is also significant to point out that the Philippines has had a lower number of strikes and lockouts as compared to other countries around us. Additionally, the Philippines has preferential access in major markets through our free trade agreements. We also continue to benefit from the EU's Generalized Scheme of Preferences, or GSP+, the only nation in ASEAN to do so. Likewise, we are currently working to push for more products to be included in the US GSP, which is under discussion for renewal. These add to the value of making Philippines as a manufacturing location for your products, as products manufactured in the country can enjoy the rules of origin, can enter the US GSP market and the EU GSP+. The Philippines is also part of the RCEP. We signed that November last year, and it's now being deliberated in the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, hopefully a plenary before the end of the year, at the latest, hopefully by January of next year. And this is intended, RCEP is intended to create in the region a more business-friendly environment. RCEP will likewise encourage closer integration of economies and provide a more stable and predictable rules-based system of trade. And amidst the pandemic, the Philippines has also been proactive in enhancing strategic, bilateral, and regional relations with other trade partners, like the continuation of the Philippine-EU FTA monitoring missions and the recent conclusion of the negotiation for the Philippines-South Korea FTA. We have also officially submitted our interest to join the CPTPP, and that's the Comprehensive Partnership and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. This would expand the Philippines' trade ties as well as create more opportunities to enhance competitiveness and market access for companies competing in the country. As our economy recovers, we are confident of achieving our pre-pandemic growth. To this end, we are facilitating greater trade and investment in the country by continuously pursuing reforms to foster a better business environment. And this is what we all saw. Even amidst the pandemic, we were continuing with the reforms and stayed the course in terms of doing the major reforms. We issued the game-changing Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises, or the CREATE Act, and making the investment climate in the Philippines Significantly more attractive, the CREATE Act rationalizes, modernizes, and offer more relevant incentives to investors. This will reduce the corporate income tax rate from 30% to 25%, as you may know by now, for large corporations, and to 20% for micro SMEs. This reduction will be crucial for businesses that wrestle with the disruption in supply chains and reduce the negative economic impact of the pandemic. The CREATE Act likewise improves the investment incentives regime with longer income tax holidays and special corporate income tax rates for eligible projects and projects listed or industries listed in the SIPP. And under the Strategic Investment Priorities Plan, we have identified industries for the grant of incentives to attract high-value, high-technology projects that will create more jobs and further sharpen the Philippines' competitiveness in the global market. The length of incentives that will be offered to corporations or investors will depend on their tier classification based on their levels of technology and location. And here are sample investment activities and their tier classification. Now, allow me to discuss briefly our updated priority industries for domestic and export markets, which includes the following. With regards to the Philippine automotive industry, we are already integrated with major global value chains. Companies like Toyota, Mitsubishi already know we help make it happen in the Philippines. We have a fairly extensive auto supply chain comprising of over 380 parts manufacturers, coupled with the strength of our die and mold, electronics, and IT BPM sectors. We can respond quickly to changes in this fast-moving market. On EVs, in relation to this, we have a developing electric vehicle industry. The Philippine EV ecosystem is composed of 54 manufacturers and importers, and the industry has generated 71,840 direct and indirect employment. We are positioning the Philippines as a regional manufacturing hub for EV and EV parts in ASEAN. We recognize that the future of transportation will be autonomous, connected, electric, and shared. Our Philippine EV ecosystem is, as discussed earlier, composed of 54 manufacturers and importers, but it includes also 11 parts manufacturers and 18 dealers and traders. On electronics industry, the Philippine electronics industry hosts about 500 global semiconductors and electronics companies. The industry is characteristically export-oriented, accounting for 62% of total Philippine exports. The Philippines is already an indispensable part of the electronics global value chain and is a center of excellence for electronic manufacturing services. We are particularly strong in test packaging and assembly of semiconductors. What's more, we are ready to become the home of competitive IC or integrated circuit design companies, serving customers worldwide, and thanks to our growing pool of IC design engineers. With regards to the country's copper industry, the Philippines is home to an estimated 1.1 billion metric ton of copper reserves, reputed to be among the highest in the world, and it fuels the global copper industry. The industry also employs 14,000 Filipinos and has an estimated value of more than $2 billion of annual copper products exports. But more than just exporting, we want to establish a downstream copper industry in the Philippines. We envision a fully integrated copper industry through the development, for example, of a wire rod casting facility and higher value copper products. Hence, we launched also the Master Development Plan for Leyte Ecological Industrial Zone last year to help us achieve this goal. On a side note, we'd like to point out the increasing demand being boosted by copper's role in rapidly growing industrial sectors like the EV, the electric vehicle batteries, and semiconductor wiring, as well as broader economic recovery efforts. Similarly, nickel, and in relation to this, Philippines is one of the major sources of nickel worldwide. It ranked 6th in nickel reserves and 2nd in nickel production. The country has nickel reserves amounting to 2 billion metric tons, and the country's nickel industry employs 9,900 Filipinos in nickel mines and processing plants. The industry GVA in mining of nickel ores account for 18.8% of the total third quarter of 2021 GVA in mining and quarrying. We are encouraging higher value adding nickel processing, for example, those that will do the sulfate and nickel hydroxide that goes into nickel zinc batteries. In aerospace, the Philippines continues to be recognized in the global aerospace industry, such as a developing player in the industry value chain. Employing around 6,000 Filipinos, the industry has capabilities in aerospace parts manufacturing, such as flight control actuation systems and oxygen systems, aircraft maintenance and repair, or MRO, and aviation, aerospace, engineering trainings. On agribusiness, and this is where we partner a lot with Secretary Dar of DA, we are blessed with rich and diverse agricultural resources, and we offer a variety of fresh fruits, vegetables, high-value live marine products, meat products, coconut, and other healthy and natural food and beverages. We are always on the lookout for partners and investors that can also aid us in the production and value-adding activities of the sector, such as agricultural technology, logistics, and marketing. The Philippines has already established strong global presence on key commodities for exports, such as fresh and dried bananas, cocoa-based products, pineapple, both including processed pineapple, fresh and dried mango, tuna, carrageenan, and lastly, prepared and preserved crabs, among others. On the other hand, moving to construction services sector is among the fastest growth driver industries, with the total demand domestically and overseas growing exponentially in the last 20 years. And of course, this being helped by the country's program on Build, Build, Build. Very good presentation from Secretary Art, as always, and of course, from the DPWH later by Secretary Mercado. And the sector contributes 16.6%, referring to the construction sector, 16.6% of GDP, or a total of $18.8 billion as of the third quarter of 2021. And the total employment in the construction sector stands at 4.4 million as of November this year. In the government's Build, Build, Build program, the government provides stimulus by infusing 40% additional infrastructure funding in 2021. Completion of 24 infrastructure flagship projects generating more than 300,000 jobs by 2022 is expected before the end of President Rodrigo Duterte's term. On IT BPM industry, of course, the Philippines is well known for its the IT BPM sector, with 13% share of the global market in 2019 and 50% in 2020. The Philippines IT BPM sector is the second largest in the world. During the pandemic, it was one of the sectors that had no layoffs, but instead continued to hire personnel. The industry is also expected to grow 8%, and export revenue is expected to hit close to $30 billion this year. We have the edge when it comes to voice-related services, as well as non-voice and high-shared, high-value service support. The next strategic hyperscaler hub in Asia Pacific, and this is where we are positioning the Philippines. E-commerce adoption in the country has also grown from 70% in 2019 to 80% in 2021. The pandemic has forced us to maximize the use of digital platforms, which also boosted the growth of the country's data center market. We now rank second overall in terms of data center market among the Southeast Asian countries, with Manila having a compound annual growth rate of 14.2%. This poses a huge potential for the country, and according to Frost & Sullivan research firm, the projected supply growth of data centers in 3 to 5 years for the Philippines is at 24%. This has led us to launch a campaign highlighting Philippines as the next strategic hyperscaler hub in the Asia-Pacific region. Our digital landscape makes it an ideal setting for hyperscalers, and the digital readiness of our enterprises are helping propel our economic growth even further. In relation to this, the DTI also believes on the AI, artificial intelligence technology, that will be a key driver of most of industry's 4.0 disruptions. To this end, DTI, in coordination with other concerned national government and in consultation with key stakeholders from industry and the academe, launched the National AI Strategy Roadmap to guide the adoption of AI in the country and its utilization in agribusiness, manufacturing, and services industries. And the key imperative of the roadmap is to accelerate innovation with AI, using AI tools by establishing a Center for AI Research. This center will serve as a hub where MSMEs and large companies alike can explore various R&D projects, and its researchers and have these linkages also with higher educational institutions and R&D institutions. Just like any national research center, this AI Research Center will serve as an incubator for collaboration between universities, industries, and government research units as we continuously improve our products and processes, increase productivity and efficiencies of industries, and push for innovation. Initially, we thought that this year's global recovery can surely be sustained, since this demand-triggered recovery is ultimately based on higher vaccination rates of Western countries. However, with developed nations, particularly those in Europe, once again struggle to take control of the spread of the pandemic, it is imperative to be ahead of the curve. For the policy aspect, there is a need for targeted health protocols rather than a blanket approach. This means being more geographically focused, strategic, and targeted in our lockdowns, and that's why we adopted a granular lockdown system and alert level system, while empowering also those who are less, the vulnerables, particularly those that have been vaccinated, to continue the economic activities. Likewise, in terms of healthcare systems capacities, we need to continuously increase and strengthen our effective treatment controls. This entails continuously boosting our vaccination supplies and supporting the R&D, as well as procurement of including also not only vaccines, but including medicines. As our country navigates this fast-changing world that forecasts an unstable future for many businesses, we are confident that the Philippines remains a premium investment destination among our neighboring countries. This is proven by our sizable market, resilient and capable human resource pool, strong commitment to protect intellectual property, our strategic trade management regime, recognized by US, EU, and Japan for dual-purpose goods and services, ideal location to link Asian and Southeast Asian value chains and key markets, wide network of FTAs and EU GSP+, sincere dedication not to dilute workers and the environment for the sake of gaining competitiveness, and lastly, our proven track record in terms of trajectory and direction of economic reforms across administrations. To this end, our country faces the challenges of the new normal head-on with our new Make It Happen in the Philippines international marketing campaign. This campaign highlights our strength and adaptability to weather through these challenges. We are confident that our new marketing campaign will promote our country's roll up your sleeves, make it work mindset that makes us a unique and attractive investment for foreign investors. The administration of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte is determined to pursue the needed major reforms that will strengthen further the country's economic foundation in line with market-based principles, ease in doing business, easing of foreign equity restrictions, and performance-based support. As we do so, we will create more jobs and employment for the Filipino people, which will give them a better and more comfortable quality of life. That is why we call on you to take a closer look at how you can partner with Philippines. You will see how we can ably support your business expansion plans and provide you with a deeper insight on how to make it happen in the Philippines. Thank you very much. Mabuhay. Salamat po.